The mafia wasn't just street crime, they controlled the docks, unions, and politicians, and some of their most closely guarded stories were never meant to be told. Welcome to Underworld Origins, the place where we expose how the world's most powerful criminal empires were born and how they rose to dominate history. To truly understand the rise of the five families, we must go back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when large waves of Italian immigrants arrived in New York City. These newcomers faced harsh living conditions, discrimination, and limited opportunities. In this environment, secret societies like the Black Hand emerged, groups that operated through intimidation and extortion, preying on their own communities to survive. The Black Hand was less organized than the later mafia, but set the stage for what would become a highly structured criminal enterprise. Its tactics of fear and secrecy introduced the concept of omerta, a strict code of silence that remains central to mafia culture. As the mafia evolved, it transformed from loosely connected gangs into the five dominant families we know today: Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese. These families took advantage of their immigrant roots and the economic opportunities in a rapidly growing New York City. Their influence extended well beyond traditional crime. They strategically controlled critical sectors, from the docks, where goods flowed in and out of the city, to labor unions and industries like construction and garment manufacturing. This combination of economic control and brutal enforcement made them one of the most powerful organized crime networks in history. These early forces set the foundation for one of the most influential criminal structures the world has ever seen. But their true rise to power was still to come. If you're enjoying this deep dive into New York's criminal history, consider subscribing. It helps me bring you more rare, carefully researched stories like this one. Now, let's continue. With prohibition in full swing, the underworld of New York saw an opportunity unlike anything before. For the emerging mafia families, it wasn't just a chance to make money, it was the turning point that would transform small neighborhood crews into multi-million-dollar operations. The 18th Amendment banned the production and sale of alcohol, but enforcement proved nearly impossible. Speakeasies flourished, corruption seeped through police precincts, and the city's demand for liquor never wavered. Into this vacuum stepped the mafia, organized, strategic, and ruthless. They built bootlegging networks like a corporate supply chain, warehouses for storage, partnerships with Canadian suppliers, control over transportation routes, and even bribed politicians to protect their operations. No longer simply shaking down immigrants in Little Italy, they were running citywide operations with precision. And with money came structure. During these years, a new generation of leaders rose to prominence: Charles Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and Vito Genovese. Young, ambitious, and strategic, they differed sharply from the old guard bosses who clung to traditional Sicilian rules. To them, crime was no longer just a family affair. It was a business that required organization, long-term planning, and profit management. Luciano recognized that endless internal wars were hurting the bottom line. Instead of letting the mafia destroy itself through old-fashioned feuds, he envisioned something revolutionary: a centralized governing body to regulate disputes, formalize cooperation, and enforce balance among the city's crime groups. This vision led to the creation of what would become known as the Commission, a council that brought together the most influential mafia leaders. For the first time, New York's underworld operated like a corporation, complete with internal rules, voting systems, and clearly defined territories. In just a few short years, scattered immigrant gangs evolved into one of the most stable criminal organizations in modern history, a system so well built that it would survive internal wars, federal investigations, and generations of leadership changes. By 1929, the mafia had split into two rival camps. On one side stood Giuseppe Joe Masseria, an old-school Sicilian boss who ruled through fear and tradition. On the other was Salvatore Maranzano, a determined challenger seeking absolute control. As the city divided behind them, ambition, loyalty, and greed collided in the shadows of New York's streets. Instead of letting the war destroy their potential fortunes, these young Turks plotted behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment to strike. The war escalated with assassinations, ambushes, and tense alliances. Every decision was calculated. One wrong move could mean death, while one brilliant maneuver could place a man at the top of the city's criminal hierarchy. Finally, Luciano made his last and most dangerous gamble. He betrayed Giuseppe Joe Masseria by arranging his assassination in 1931. With Masseria gone, Salvatore Maranzano declared himself the boss of bosses, but his reign was short-lived. Valuing efficiency over tradition, Luciano soon orchestrated Maranzano's death, ending the Sicilian-style feud and paving the way for a new era in organized crime. From the desperation of immigrant neighborhoods to the violence of prohibition, and finally to the ruthless calculations forged during the Castellamarese War, the American Mafia did not appear overnight. It evolved, shaped by hardship, opportunity, and ambition, into something far more dangerous than street gangs or loose alliances. By the early 1930s, New York's underworld had been transformed. What once thrived on chaos was now a structured criminal system built on hierarchy, discipline, and profit, a system that would dominate the city from the shadows for decades. And this was only the beginning. Long before power was formalized, before commissions and bosses ruled behind closed doors, fear had already become the mafia's most effective weapon. If you want to understand how organized crime truly took root in New York, from its earliest extortion networks to the empires that followed, subscribe to Underworld Origins, because every criminal empire has an origin.